Hey everyone, my name is Mike. My goal is to be on the Alone Show. Despite the beautiful surroundings, I'm currently only 17 miles away from Manhattan. Yep, it really takes almost an hour to go just 17 miles. We're at South Mountain Reservation. I'm gonna go ahead and take a hike and show you guys exactly what I'm taking with me if I was to get on alone. There's only one piece of kit that I didn't bring along, and that is my bow, because hunting is prohibited over here, but I'll show it to you inside my van later. See you in a few. You can see rule number 10. I've been studying the Alone Show since it first came out. I recognize that this is a game of calories. Like everything in life, I attack it with a plan, and this is my plan in terms of items that I would bring. Everything is about either saving calories, such as by saving heat, or by gaining calories, such as procuring food. So let's start with the basics. Very first item you need is a good axe. Now this is an old camping hatchet that I've had for 20 years. It's certainly not the one that I would bring with me on this adventure, but it was backpack size, so I brought it with me. What I would probably bring is a Scandinavian forest axe. The reason for that is because the boreal forest of Canada is exactly the same type of forest as they have in Sweden. And that's where a lot of those axes are made. They've been made for those surroundings and they'll perform well. And I'll go ahead and show you that one later on. It's just too big to fit in here. One modification that I would make is to add an overstrike guard in order to prolong the life of the handle and make your life easier when you're there. The next item was a really tough choice. I really wanted to bring a hunting knife, but in the end I decided that snares bring in way too much food, and if you're gonna use snares, then you need to have a multi-tool. So I've got a very popular multi-tool here. I like this particular kind because a lot of its parts are A, replaceable, and B, very big and heavy duty. So you can see it's got a knife, it's got a mini saw that's great for creating traps, it's got a scissor for fine work, it's got pliers. The pliers are what we're going to use for trapping. Alongside the multi-tool would be, of course, snare wire. Now this snare wire is pretty good for capturing rabbits, and it's pretty straightforward. You'd use the pliers to essentially create a loop. Of course, there are different sizes for different types of game. Let's say rabbits, you want it to be about 4 inches. Let's go ahead and show you right here. Wrap it right around, create a loop, and then you take the other end, bring it right through, and eventually you have a noose. So you can see right here. You'd have to anchor it very strongly to some place so that, you know, the animal certainly can pass away ethically and not run away and you don't lose your trap. For demonstration, got a little dog toy here. You'd have this a couple inches off the ground. I want to make sure that I'm on camera here, so 1 second. Couple inches off the ground. It's anchored properly. The rabbit goes in, gets stuck, and oh, you've got dinner tonight. If I wasn't going to bring snare wire, I'd bring a knife that's made for bushcrafting, one that has a really thick spine and a full tang. This one has a Scandi grind. It's really hardcore. It's very good for, you know, creating feather sticks, for batoning wood. Does the job well. I would also bring a saw. That's if I wasn't replacing both of these with the multi-tool, and snare wire. Now this saw is pretty small, and I'm torn between taking a bigger one or this, but I like this one because it's made for both bone as well as wood. And when you can saw into bone really easily, then you can capture a lot of nutrients that others may not be able to quite easily. That is the bone marrow. A lot of people attribute bone marrow to, you know, some of the first huge amounts of growth in humans and our brains and our power, all because we accessed other nutrients that others simply could not. So I like the idea of being able to saw through both bone as well as wood. But in the end, I decided that the calories gained from snare wire are more than worth it to get rid of my beloved knife as well as a saw. And in the end, we'll see if that's a gamble that's worthwhile. Next, of course, in the calorie game is a good pot. I like this pot for a couple of reasons. First of all, it has legs, so I can put it right up top a bunch of coals and have the heat come up from the bottom, but I can also put a lot of coals up top and cook food from both sides. When you're out in the wilderness, you want to make sure that you don't get sick, and you need to cook food properly and thoroughly. Trichinosis is a very real issue. You know, people spend months in a hospital, and that can take people out. It's also a good way to melt ice, to gain water. It's easy to maintain a cast iron. You season it before you get there, so there's a lot of cool things about a Dutch oven and cast iron. It's durable, it's hardcore. You have to take a little bit of care of it, but it works great. So far, we have an axe. We have a multi-tool. We have snare wire. We have a pot. How are you going to cook food? You need to have a fire. In order to make a fire, you need a good ferro rod. Now this is a ferro rod that I modified a little bit on my own. I put in some motivational text right in there. Hopefully you can see that. Let's get that to focus. Describe it for anyone that's visually impaired. It says, "Oath of excellence, always be prepared." Has a polar bear, the North Star, 2 Viking axes, trees, and a fire. All these symbols have meaning to me and will give me motivation. Whenever I'm cold, whenever I'm tired, whenever I'm hungry, whenever I'm struggling to make a fire in wet conditions, I'll look at this and I'll remember my way of life. I always strive for excellence. I always be prepared, and be prepared is also the motto of the Boy Scouts, a program that I spent a lot of years in and that really shaped me into who I am today. So I love that. Now this is 6 inches by ½ inch thick, so it's pretty big. You should be able to get thousands upon thousands of strikes with this. Some modifications. I just painted this a little bit orange with glow-in-the-dark paint. I don't ever want to risk losing this. That can be really demotivational. And I'd probably change out the striker into something a little bit better. If I was bringing my knife, then I wouldn't even bother with that, because the Scandi grind and actually the back of the knife is just perfect for striking these things. Also, I've heard that the back of the saw on multi-tools works pretty great. You know what? Let's try that right now. It's got a nice flat edge. Make sure I'm on camera here. Oh yeah. Might have poked a hole in my tarp with the sparks of the flame. So one thing that you want to make sure you get if you are going to get a tarp, because you are supplied with one that's meant for the camera gear, is a heavy duty tarp. The one that I have right now is not heavy duty, it's medium duty. I would get something bigger, thicker, and stronger. I like this because it's brown and green, blends in well. I can use it for water procurement, waterproofing my shelter. I can use it for creating traps. I can use it to create a canoe. I can use it on the first day to save calories and focus on hunting while the weather is a little bit warmer, and have a very basic shelter setup and focus on gaining those calories first when it's easiest, when I have to put in the least amount of effort, relatively speaking. Next on the calorie game, of course, is fishing line and fishing hooks. Now, you have to bring in barbless hooks, and I think that's better for the fish too. You'd bring in a variety of sizes, and I don't want to give away all my secrets, so I'll just show you one. I like, you know, the octopus shape. I like circle hooks. I find that they hold on to fish longer, especially if you're going barbless. You will have more that get loose, so the shape of the hook matters a lot. And this is just one of many varieties that I would bring. That's all I'll give away on that one. And this one is very much location dependent, but it would be a gill net. Now this gill net has some floating line built into it, which will make life a little bit easier. And I would just use rocks to weigh it down on the bottom. Gill nets are an incredible resource. You have to use them responsibly. Be careful about what you catch, and make sure that the sizes are within the permits. You want smaller fish to be able to swim through if needed, and you want to just be conscious when you use these things. You don't want to lose it. You want to make sure it's very secure, because they can have a big impact on the environment, but they are absolutely a game changer when it comes to catching food. So I'm bringing one, and I'm going to be very thoughtful about using it. Only the last two items I'm going to show you later on, one of which is my Primitive Recurve bow. I'm going to bring an assortment of arrows. If they allow carbon arrows, I'll bring those. Otherwise, I'll use wood. I'll bring probably 3 broadheads for big game like deer. It's going to be a 40-pound bow, which is, you know, generally the recommended poundage and the minimum poundage in most states. I don't want to go too heavy because later on in the season, yeah, I might not be able to hunt a moose or a bigger game animal like that, because it would need to be 50 pounds. But if your strength gets weaker, you want to be able to handle your bow. And just in general, I'm most accurate with a 40-pound bow, so that's what I'm going to use. Second item is going to be an expedition sleeping bag. It will be one that has down fill, but it'll have a synthetic exterior to make it a little bit waterproof. Of course, I'll be relying on my shelter, you know, to do all the waterproofing, but just in case, makes it better. And it'll be rated to -30 degrees. It's a good balance, quite honestly, between price and performance. I'm gonna go back now and show you my last two in another setting. Hey everyone, back in my rig. Wanted to show you all 10 items at once. Let's count them out. Primitive bow and arrows. Right now I have my field tips on them. I'll probably take 1 field tip to practice. Probably take 3 broadheads. Put that back in the case. A couple blunt tips. These are for small birds. Probably take some flu arrows as well, so they don't fly away too much. So number 1, bow and arrows. Number 2, Scandinavian forest axe. In case you were wondering what I was referring to as an overstrike guard, it would be this. I have to soften it and treat the leather tonight, then I'll apply it. Number 3, multi-tool. Number 4, snare wire. 5, ferro rod. 6, fishing line and hooks. 7, gill net. 8, pot. 9, heavy duty expedition sleeping bag. And 10, tarp. That's all, folks. Thanks a lot for watching, and take care.